Hello, and welcome to ABC15's coverage of the Arizona general election. My name is Garrett Archer. I am the data analyst with ABC15, and joining me today is Mike Noble. He is the chief research officer and CEO of OH Predictive Insights, a polling firm in Arizona. And we're here to just sort of go over some of the results. We're here to go over some of what the races, what's going on, what we're seeing with what might happen with the outstanding ballots. And we're here to take your questions too. So if you have anything, you have any questions, you want to ask us about what's going on, Mike and I, for full disclosure, we've known each other for about 12 years now, right, Mike? And
Yes,
we've been in this business for quite some time, so we can answer pretty much any question about politics from the top down. But we're also going to go over these races. So Mike, what do you think, man? What do you think what's going on with these races right now? Let's just go right over to the general elections page and see what's going on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one way to describe, elections, not only nationally, but especially here in battleground Arizona, the new place Arizona finds itself, is that the one word to really describe election so far is wild. And I think that's probably the best summary of that. And so not only the national is that's getting filtered out, but Arizona still, even though they called it a bit early on the presidential contest, still that is still a bit of an open case right now. But hopefully later today or in the next few days, we can hopefully close out the last big show, but tons of other races. But yeah, it's just been wild. So, but yeah, let's which one do you want to start with first?
It is interesting. We have about 400 at my last count, and of course this is just an estimate, but my last estimate has us at about 430,000 remaining ballots. That's what it looks like we have. We had 2 drops last night that equaled out about 130,000 ballots from Maricopa County, I believe. Now those ballots that we saw last night, very friendly to Trump. They were very friendly. They were, I believe, they were 59, 34, and 57. 35, 36, both respectively. They were within that sort of range where Donald Trump was winning both of them. And he really pulled some margins through. He was starting the night before 7 o'clock. He was at 93,000 between Biden and Trump. And he, just in those 2 drops alone, he was able to squeeze through 30,000. So that's definitely on the cusp of what, if what statistical analysts believe he would need in order to take Biden, take the lead from Biden. He's quite literally treading water here on these results, and if it's even possible for him to pull it out. What do you think?
Well, and I think that's the million or $100 million question, depending on who you're asking. Is that on this presidential contest, it's 2 tails. There's one of odds, and there's one of the math. Currently, in the math, he is still viable. And we saw from the election night, there were 2 dumps yesterday of ballots. And when that came, he had to hit a certain percentage, as you were saying, of those ballots. So they come in, which way are they splitting? Are they going more Biden? Are they going more Trump? Again, he has to hit a certain number. And he hit that number on both yesterday. And but so, literally, quite, he hit it on the button. And so you look at that, and then you go, is that, okay, can he keep up the pace? Like, does he increase or go above it, or does it go really below? And it's very much like walking a tightrope. And so that is the math aspect. And at any point, Trump could fall off. And again, Biden ultimately does fully carry the state. Or you look at, and it could be basically like Seabiscuit and have a pretty miraculous comeback and win overall. So that's one side. And the other side is the odds. The odds say that odds are absolutely in Biden's favor on this. But as we have come to learn through watching elections, just because you have an 80% chance or 90% chance, there is still a chance that you could not get it. So, and that's the thing, is that that's really the 2 items. But with this very contentious election, I think what we're doing is trying to be very good about it, not jump the gun, and just make sure definitively that's the case. Because the worst case is, hey, Trump, Biden won Arizona, Biden won Arizona. Oh, by the way, actually, Trump won. And people would be kind of, like, what the heck? So, and that's kind of the current state I think we're in. I'm hoping tonight we'll have some type of realization, but that's the current state, is Arizona is exactly what we thought. It's a battleground state, and it is a close election.
Yeah, I mean, quite literally, in one of these Maricopa County drops, was, as you said, Trump needs all the political wins in his favor. He needs to win all of these, and it's even if he wins one of these drops by only 51-48, that's not enough.
Absolutely. I think if the year 2020 has taught us anything, anything is possible. If you can have a 100-year pandemic, if you can have murder hornets, if you can have all these other countless events that happened this year, it's funny is that, what a way to end 2020 or get to the end of, again, something that is miraculous as this happened. But again, it still is a possibility and you cannot rule it out. But that's currently what we have been checking and watching. And so, again, that's really the two tales that are going on right now.
Was Wickenburg ballots ever picked up and counted? I do not know the answer to that, Kayla, offhand. What I can tell you is that the precinct level votes were all counted. The voting centers basically were all done on Tuesday night. And this is pretty much indicative across all the county. All the counties always want to count all their precinct votes on Tuesday night. We do have some stragglers. We had some stragglers we processed yesterday that were precinct level votes. But my understanding is that I have not heard any reports from any news outlets or anything that shows that there are any outstanding precincts. And so my understanding is that all of those vote centers are in at this point, especially in Arizona or Maricopa County. Oswaldo, can you explain that Arizona's minority made a huge impact for elections this year? So yeah, let me, what I'm going to do is we're going to go to a map. We do at ABC15 have a live precinct map of what's going down on the ground right now.
That is a beautiful map.
This is the results of the presidential election as they stand right now. They won't be the final results. This will change over time. But let's sort of see, to address Oswaldo's questions, we're gonna look at some areas, and I'm just gonna go to areas that I know because I'm pretty familiar with the Arizona map and where certain ethnicity groups are more prevalent in a certain area, which helps us sort of understand what Oswaldo is asking about, if minorities are playing a prominent role in an election or not. So we're going to go to right here in this area of Phoenix. We're going to click on this precinct right here, Riverside, and we can see that we have about 2,100 votes in this precinct. This is a predominantly Hispanic precinct, and we do have this 78 Biden, 20 Trump. And what you'll see is a lot of these precincts will sort of mirror that number, 78, 20. And this is a fairly Hispanic area of Arizona, of the Phoenix area. And you can see 80, 20. So it does appear that when you look in these Hispanic areas of the Phoenix metro, that Donald Trump, as of right now, is losing. I mean, excuse me, let me flip that. Joe Biden is essentially carrying Hispanic areas 80-20. And we can go all the way back down to, if we go into Pima and Santa Cruz is probably the most Hispanic county in the state. We can go here and see, again, we're seeing the same pattern, 79-20. We're seeing 79-20. And I know some people would look at this saying, oh, this is different, but no, I mean, this is one city. There's a lot of, there's a lot of cultural similarities that goes on in one city. So seeing 70, 80, 20 in one area is pretty much, you'd expect that in most cases. So what I'm not seeing anything that surprised me right here. It does look like Donald Trump did lose Hispanics by it looks like about 60 points or so. It just is pretty phenomenal job. So I don't want to say job, but I think that goes to your point as well. It does look like the Hispanic vote did play a prominent role in where the results are right now.
And if I could add is that, because you basically, like, you look at Florida, for example, that, the Hispanic Latino vote over there, went very differently from the people that were polling in that area. And what's interesting is that their Hispanic Latino population is very much different from ours. They have a decent Cuban component to them, especially in that Miami-Dade County. And ultimately, they really, Democrats really kind of missed that group. But when you look at Arizona, our Hispanic Latino population is very much different, more presiding from, Mexico, South America, Central America. And so when you see that in the polling, we showed Hispanics where we're going to, Trump was behind roughly about at least 2-1, when it comes to that group. I mean, a very massive, gap between them. And so Arizona's election is that they're a very large demographic group, and they have, starting especially in 2018, they have become increasingly more engaged. And so, they continue to play a key role. And census-wise, I think they'll be the majority group here in the next 30 years, I think, based on census and Pew projections. So absolutely, they make an impact.
Yes, Lori, there are around 430,000 ballots left to be counted in Arizona right now. That is a give or take number. It could be, say that, is it true? There were 123 last night, and every one of them was a vote for Biden. That is absolutely not true, Becky. The majority of the votes were for Donald Trump last night. To go back to the other question, which I'm sorry I may have missed there.
And Garrett, do you want to clarify real quick the differences between our states and the ballot counting compared to states like Georgia or Pennsylvania? Because especially with the rhetoric of, hey, stop counting the ballots. But I think in Arizona, you don't want to stop counting ballots here if you're Donald Trump, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that we saw Donald Trump tweet today something about stop the count, and I'm not commenting on politics. This is the data. Gotcha. I totally stay in the data. However, what I can say, Lori, is with that 430,000, what we do know is that the majority of these ballots right now, just because we've been tracking these ballots, is that a good sizable majority of these ballots are from Republicans. We do know that if you look back in the last several weeks before the election, we do know that Donald Trump was very adamant about being anti ballot by mail. He said, he didn't trust the USPS, he didn't trust the ballot by mail system, and that did matriculate down to some of his followers and or his supporters, excuse me. And it seems that there was a sizable number of Republicans that opted to drop their mail on they either mailed in the last day or they dropped their ballot by mail on election day, which means we have a lot more Republicans coming in. That's why when we came out on Tuesday, the Democrats had 10-point leads. We've already had some leads evaporate. We have, for example, if you look at Congressional District 6, this is a district that Hiral Tipernini started on Tuesday night. She had a 54-48 lead, I think it is. It was about a 4-point lead. And just last night, David Schweigert is now about 6,000 votes ahead as these Republican votes are coming in. And you can see this reflected in the map here. You can see the stronghold Republican areas of Fountain Hills are getting redder. This area of the sort of the purple ring, this is the swing area of Maricopa County. It goes all the way down to the 101 freeway, and you can start seeing some red spotting here. It used to be that it was just blue all around. If you looked at this map a couple days ago, it was all blue in this area, and now we've got red precincts starting to pop in. Oh, we just got 1,900 ballots from Yuma. We just got that, just come across the line. I'm tracking ballots as they're coming in, so we can actually go and see what those ballots look like. Just give me 1 minute, and I will pull the ballots.
This is a rarity. Not many people get to see Arizona's very own data guru in action with the data. So this is quite the treat.
So it's only 1,900 ballots, but we're always we want to see how these things are shaping out here. We'll go to the let's see, the presidential. I'm looking at it right now, and it looks like Joe Biden won this drop in Yuma, 1,041 to 856. So this was a friendly batch of ballots from Yuma County for Joe Biden. That could signal that we're coming to the end where we're getting more independents into the mix, and that might signal trouble for Donald Trump's chances going forward.
And by the way, Alicia's question here is pretty good.
Yes, so Alicia, they should be done counting ballots on at least Maricopa County. We're being told they should be done on Friday night. There will be some provisionals and conditional provisionals and some other styles of ballots, but unless the races are razor thin at that point, those provisional ballots, there will simply just not be enough in the total number to actually change the totals. And in fact, a lot of those conditional provisionals will be tossed out because and that's again pretty standard. The conditional provisional by definition is basically you don't have a driver's license. The poll worker doesn't even know if you are a resident of Arizona or anywhere, and you walk in, you say, hey, I want to vote. I have no ID. I have no nothing. They're like, well, they're not legally allowed to turn you away from the polls. So they give you what's called a conditional provisional, and then they verify your information. So they make sure you write everything down. And so you fill out your vote, they put it in a specific envelope color, they take it back, and they review it, and they say, okay, is this person actually registered to vote? And more, in a good portion of times, a plurality, I would say, you're not registered to vote in a conditional provisional, and so they just toss the ballot. But that's the whole point. And there's not that many of those, by the way. It's a very small universe. So we are coming down to the wire. Probably this weekend we'll be done with the count.
Absolutely. And it's interesting when you're looking at this CD6 area. It was it was that western portion there, so that western edge of the district. So that is that kind of. So CD6 is a very interesting district. It encompasses Fountain Hills, Cave Creek, north, and a little bit of Central Scottsdale, and then west is Phoenix. But especially where you see some of that light blue and the western side those are the Phoenix suburbs. And you notice as you get closer to that urban core, that's Phoenix, a little southwest, is that a bit more darker blue, because just in general, Democrats are stronger in urban cores. We know the big shift lately has been really in the suburbs. We've seen the shift, and that's really one of the key factors, but among many factors, but one of the key factors of why Arizona's turned to a battleground state. But as you get kind of further out, it becomes more red. It's very interesting to see on these results. But you see those suburbs again. Really, that's really been the big shift here in Arizona.
Yeah, and let's take the other portion of this equation. So let's look at this blue area right here, and let's see what it looked like when you're an area that is. Let me ask this question first. Are the poll watchers bipartisan? So yes, the how this works is that the both of the major parties, any registered political party with the state of Arizona, can register poll watchers with these counties, and they all do. If you look at the Democrats and the Republicans, they all have a whole group of people that are registered bipartisan. And in fact, if there's any problem in the ballot, so for example, if there's a coffee stain on the ballot, or this Sharpie thing that everyone's talking about, I go in that.
Sharpie Gate.
I could do 2 weeks on Sharpie Gate. But what I can tell you is that if there was a problem with Sharpie Gate, if Sharpie Gate was in fact a real thing, what that would do is they would sit there and they would they've got what's called adjudicators. So they would look at a ballot and try to figure intent, and that group of people. So if for some reason you marked your ballot and then accidentally marked another little part, and then when it fed to the tabulator kicked it out because it didn't know who to vote for, then they'd have it sent to an adjudication panel, which would then look at it. Bipartisan group of people has to look at this and say, okay, this is a vote for Joe Biden, or this is a vote for Donald Trump, and that's how that works in the adjudication process, to make sure that there's not one party sitting in that room at all times. So okay, sorry, I was going to the next thing. I just wanted to answer that question. Let's look at this district. Go ahead and let's talk a little bit about State Senate District LD 28. I know that it's a state Senate district, but talk about this blue and red switch here and what your thoughts on that are.
Well, what was the question? Sorry. I can't do two things at once.
Yeah, no, I understand. This is the district this is State Representative LD 28. Let me move to State Senate.
Yep.
Talk about the Brophy McGee race right now with Christine Marsh. I know she's down. She's down by about 3,000, I think, right now. And just sort of talk about what you're seeing here, and if she has a chance to come back.
So this is an interesting district. Is that it's again, this is one of tale of two cities. You have half of the district is very affluent, educated. Then you have one more a suburban contingent, a little lower income. So again, it's a very mixed district, but very much a swing district here in Arizona. It's actually one of the closest legislative races last election. And it's interesting is that there was a lot of ticket splitting in here, because that district, had a tendency, was very strong McCain. So maybe a bit more moderate when it came to how they vote. And so it was one of the things going into it. It's actually very interesting to see of how polarized the national parties are. To come down to this local level is that given with registration gains that Democrats have made in that district, to see Kate, frankly, in the position she is right now,
I think is really a bit of a testament, because she's not known as a conservative Republican. She's known as definitely a more moderate one. And again, for that district, again, you have to be very much in the middle in order to carry it. But I think I could see that race potentially shifting places, and that's why we have to get through counting these ballots. But right now, it's actually pretty impressive, surprisingly, because based on the numbers, you would think, how close the margin was last time. Only a few hundred votes Kate won by, for example, in that state Senate contest. Actually is a little bit, again, it's kind of a bit of surprising and interesting district to watch.
So I've pulled up the entire map just to get a look at what it looks like from the actually, I guess, several mile level at this point. So this really shows the urban-rural split in Arizona. We are a slightly different state than most states in our urban-rural split here, because we do have a significant portion of our rural areas that are blue. That is something that if you saw a precinct map of, say, some other states in the east, you would not see this much blue in the rural areas. Well, we have a tremendous amount of tribal land in Arizona. You can see this right here. This is the Navajo Nation right here. This has always been a very traditionally Democratic area. You pick on any one of these and you can see Biden winning 72% to Trump's 26%. This is all fairly common for this area. 87-12, again, very common for this area. But then, of course, when you go over here to Kingman, to the left, to the side near the Colorado River, you see nearly the exact opposite. Now in Mojave, you see Donald Trump carrying a precinct 76% to Biden's 23%. So it's completely flipped in those other rural areas.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see Arizona's makeup, especially the Northeast, as you were mentioning, a very large Native American population we have here, but the largest concentration up there in the Northeast with the Navajo Nation. And you see with how they have been trending in voting. But then, you see obviously where the darkest blues are, typically those urban cores, such as, the larger cities here in Arizona, such as Tucson down south. You have Maricopa, of course, in the center, or Phoenix, more specifically. Then, of course, you have up north is Flagstaff. So it's interesting to see. But as you come to some of those more rural parts, aside from where there's maybe some tribal land, again, it gets a little bit more redder as you go out there.
And it's what's interesting about that area. You take a district of like Arizona 1. This is a congressional district. I know, Mike, you have some familiarity with this district because you've back in your day before you were a pollster, you did some races in this district.
And it's a large geographic.
Yes, this district is larger than most states of the union. And what's interesting here when we look at this district is how typically, because this is a rural district, this should technically favor Republicans. But this is a district now in which Tom O'Halloran is beating his Republican opponent. He is the incumbent, Tiffany Shedd, 52-47. That's about a 14-point advantage there, or excuse me, a 14,000 vote advantage. I mean, look at the interesting. This region has some very interesting mixes in here. You have the Navajo Nation, you have Flagstaff and Sedona. That is sort of adding sort of an urban component to the other rural districts. You come down here and now you have the White Mountain Apache tribal reservation. So you have two tribal reservations here, and then you come over here to even the southern tip in Pinal, and you have even more tribal area in this district. So you have basically three tribes in this district, and it definitely shows in the results.
It's one of those interesting congressional districts because on paper it seems very competitive. However, ever since redistricting, Republicans have struggled to take it over. And, the races have always been somewhat close, but definitely not close enough to flip it over. And what's interesting is that Arizona will be adding, after this election, a 10th congressional district due to our population growth. And I'm very excited to see how they redraw the lines on the congressional districts, because frankly, outside of Arizona's 6th district, which is very much a more unique case of why that's competitive, these races have really become stagnant when it comes to competitiveness here. And I think with the redrawing the lines, I'd be curious to see how they kind of reshape that, the districts. And I think 2022 is going to be an exciting year locally for Arizona, because this year I would say has very been much about the national implications from the presidential contest and U.S. Senate.
Absolutely, and it's going to be interesting to see how the that district gets drawn as well. So that we're going to be watching that in the next couple of years as the Independent Redistricting Commission meets, and we go through that. So Ruth Ramsey asks, did the early ballots get counted? So in most counties, there are still outstanding early ballots. If you mailed in your ballot, and you actually mailed it in, you are able to check the status at Arizona.vote to see if it was mailed in and if it was received. Maricopa County also has something at Maricopa.vote. We can do the same thing. That is if you mailed in a ballot, not if you voted at the polling place, but you had a ballot at home. One of the things that's going on with that canceled status, the other thing we're seeing with the canceled thing is it has something to do with people who, and this isn't in every case, this is a database status, but a good portion of these people are people who are on the permanent early voter list, which means they're supposed to get a mail-in vote and vote that mail-in ballot, and then they decided to vote in person. There's nothing wrong with doing that, by the way. You can totally do that. But if you go then to check what the status of your early vote is, well, it's been canceled because you've already voted by mail. You voted on election day. So of course your early vote's been canceled. So that's one of the reasons why we saw a lot of cancellation statuses this year. And did the early vote get counted? The answer is very likely it's already been counted, but there's still about 430,000 left out.
And I've got a question for you. So how does, let's say, use an example, how does Arizona and how they run elections just overall, and not looking at anyone specifically, how does, like, say, state of Arizona compare to a state such as like Pennsylvania?
Well, Arizona has had a robust early balloting program for quite some time. In fact, we are essentially a ballot by mail state, but de facto. This is the first. This is a different year, obviously, with what's going on, but realistically, 80% or more of our ballots are coming in by mail at this point. So, Pennsylvania is a state that does not have a robust ballot by mail program. They may have an early vote program, but they're two completely different things. And so that's, we do have sort of established how to do this. Pennsylvania is establishing how to do this right now, but we know, everybody's got the same processes to process these ballots, because there's only a couple ways to process these ballots properly. It's the counting that's different. And a lot of these Pennsylvania counties, they're like, oh, we're going to count these early ballots. We're going to start the process of verifying and counting these early ballots after the election. And
even though they may have them, right? So
places like Arizona would be like, you sure you want to do that? Because it takes us 2 weeks to process, a couple 100,000 or, a million or so ballots. You're Pennsylvania, you're much bigger than us. You probably want to start counting now instead of waiting till after the election.
So I think takeaways, Arizona might be a little ahead of the curve when it comes to.
Well, I did believe that Pennsylvania did say that they are getting ready to finish their counting now. So they actually might beat us, but they don't have as much early vote as we do. So, ballot by mail. So what is being done with the nearly 17,000 provisionals? So the 17,000 provisionals are the last things to be checked. So if you voted a provisional ballot, it has to be researched. They take the longest of all of these ballot types to research, because you literally have to make sure that that person is registered to vote. So, you have the information, you check it against the official voter file, and then you have to check the signatures. And there's a whole mess of things that have to be done to make sure the provisionals are correct. And then once they are verified as correct and proper, they are then tabulated.
Spot on.
Yeah. So, all right, let's see.
And let's get questions. We can go through them. Start going
Yeah. We'll have some more questions a little bit. Let's go through the propositions while we're talking really quick.
Nice.
Until someone else has a question. Let's see. Let me just go to the propositions and see what I haven't actually looked at the proposition numbers for now. Did I pull up Proposition 208? We're going to start with 208, which is the 3.5% annual taxable annual income surcharge on those making 250,000 more, or I think 500,000 for married people. This is passing by a pretty substantial margin right now. It looks like it's about 52-47, 52-347. It's about 120,000 votes now. I think at that point, what do you think? Does that look like it's sort of outside the margins of flipping at this point?
It's kind of what we were predicting going in, is that we knew it would probably tighten enough, but the question was, did they have enough runway essentially to drive that that yes down when it came to the no campaign. And so we knew it'd be close, but it seems to be that looks like it's probably going to come up a little bit short unless something miraculous happens. However, just the way the votes have been kind of splitting on it, I think Proposition 208 is going to land up passing, just like but 207 was definitely a little bit stronger, and that one was able to be called much earlier. But looks like they're both going to be passing.
Yeah, let's look at where this is getting support in areas it shouldn't be getting. Well, not, but it ideologically shouldn't be getting support, as what I would say. Let's look at the more Republican areas. We can see how this is why 208 is spreading across ideological lines. There were a significant amount. There were a number of Republicans that voted for this measure, and you can see it here in places like out here in the very, very deep East Valley. This is raw Republican territory right now. These are areas that Donald Trump won 60-30 against Hillary Clinton in 2016. And these are areas that are supporting this measure by 56-44 right now. There's a couple areas. Now, I do expect some of these to flip when we start getting new results in, as some of the more Republican results come in. But still, there's a lot more areas. If you look basically on this and you pretend that this is red and blue, and you go back to the president, you can see there's a heck of a lot more green in areas that there are red now for the president. So there are Republican precincts in the Deep East Valley that are supporting Proposition 208.
And what was very interesting about Prop 208 is that there's two aspects of it. One is you have the education component, which we know is currently the #1 issue for Arizona voters, at least based on OHPI's polling. But when it comes to a history, Arizona has a history of kind of being a bit more anti-tax. So again, you have a tax. Again, they're a little bit against that. However, you have education, which is incredibly important, the #1 issue among voters. So to see how it shaked out so far, it was interesting. But it seems like the education prevailed over the tax.
And let's look at the marijuana legalization, which is passing 60-40 right now. And this is incredible as far as it basically has support from the entirety of the urban core of Maricopa County, with the exception of Sun City, which is a large retirement community in Maricopa County, as well as Sun Lakes and a couple small ex-urban precincts over here in the East Valley. But essentially, and Paradise Valley essentially stands alone right there in the middle. But otherwise, it is full support across the board in the entire.
Look at some of those Republican bastions, especially because when we looked at the numbers, it seemed like a lot of the groups were in favor. The only two outlier groups that weren't fully in favor of it was Republicans, but especially older Republicans, so seniors. Yes. So Republican senior areas. I'm curious, such as you have obviously Sun City and Leisure World out into the east. In Maricopa, then you have Oro Valley area in southeast Arizona. I'm curious how kind of those folks went, because they were really the only group kind of maybe not as on board compared to the rest.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see what happens there, but that one's definitely outside of the realm of the outstanding ballots left. So it does appear. I'm not in the business of calling races, but I would be very, very surprised if that changes. I mean, it would be astounding. It literally needs to win. Nearly 80% of all the votes has to go no from here on out. So I don't think that's going to happen. So is there an estimate of how many military mail-in ballots there are? That is a great question, Christian. I do not know the answer to that. Those ballots are called Uniformed and Overseas Civilian Voting Act. UOCAVA is the name that's given to that, and that is handled by the Secretary of State's office. They would have that number, and they are going to report that number to the federal government in February when the Elections Administration Commission does their survey, which everybody or Elections Assistance Commission, I'm sorry, does their survey.
And don't their ballots, though, overseas or military, don't those go out a little bit earlier too?
Oh, much earlier. The overseas ballots went out to everybody back in I want to say September. So they've been out for quite some time Are we distracting lines only by party choice or race, or are we distracing lines only by party choice or race or population? I'm presuming you mean something about how these districts are drawn. And what's interesting about that, Gina, is that what we find is that there is, when you're drawing lines, there obviously is some community of interest that is put into this, and obviously Republicans and Democrats want the districts to favor them. They want to have the most congressional districts. That makes sense. That's so what it is obviously you have certain groups that support these parties. You have competing interests trying to get these lines drawn in their favor, but you also have a situation in which we as a population simply self-sort. So you have areas, like we take this example right here, this Paradise Valley, the home value, the market value of these houses right here are significantly higher. I mean, we're talking astronomically higher than even homes that are a couple miles away in this area. These homes right here are probably worth I don't know, what do you think, $400,000 or $500,000? And these are $3 million homes.
Yeah.
So
I can afford to live there.
What? No, exactly. No, exactly. I can't afford to live there. I mean, that's one of the wealthiest areas in the country. So yeah, we sort of self-sort, and then also happens around socioeconomic lines, and it happens on ethnic lines as well sometimes. Do you have any idea when the remaining ballots of percentages of Republicans versus Democrats? Dale, it does appear that for the remainder of the early ballots, it probably is going to be majority Republican. It is going to be less Republican as time goes on, but it will not. The gap between Democrats and Republicans is going to shrink from, I think, 20 right now to, I think, 16 or 14, one of those. But it's the others that are picking up. So the Republican number is actually is effectively staying the same. It's the other number that is increasing, not really the Democrats. What's interesting is I've had some theories on that. If that other number is, Charles, that number is 430,000-ish. Is the number of ballots that are left out. So I talked to a consultant today, and we have to finish up here really quick, but I talked to a consultant, Mike, what do you think about this? Someone was telling me that they thought that there is a chance that the independents that are outstanding are more Republican leaning simply because they're in the same situation in which they're returning their ballot late because of not trusting the mail system.
Well, I mean, there's absolutely a chance, and that's really the problem right now, is that we don't have enough publicly information available to fully know. If we actually knew, hey, of these 430,000 ballots, we know they're from this area, they're, let's say whatever their age is or their party status, etc., we would be able to make far better inferences on it. Really, the best inferences we can make is looking at previous returns and saying, hey, based on previous returns of this group, there's different groups from the early groups of people at the polls, those late earlies, etc. You can actually figure out or have a rough idea. However, again, we don't unfortunately have enough information. There's these assumptions, but that's really what we're watching and waiting for to unequivocally know, because the last thing I think any of us want is to, again, call something a little too early, and we'd want to know definitively. But it's really I think a great conclusion to what the election has been. Arizona's not like relevance in it, but again, we're ground zero and have such a big national impact. And it just really shows why it's so important to get out, engage, and vote, and how important the electoral process is.
So let's see. Oh, thank you very much, Gene. I really appreciate it. That's very kind of you to say. This is such great informative live stream, and thank you for sharing your knowledge. Thank you.
Leads up to his reputation.
So, Mike, what do you think about what's going to happen at the end here? I mean, we're pretty much coming down to the line. What do you think the chances are that we're going to? Are we going to see a Trump resurgence, or are we going to see basically everything being called for Biden? Just what's sort of your gut feeling right now?
Well, think of like this, put it in perspective, is like if Trump ekes it out, which he would be a very small amount, it would be very similar to a story like Rudy or Seabiscuit. However, odds right now definitely very much more in favor of the Democrats. But again, odds, right? So we're going to know here pretty soon. We're going to get this wrapped up soon here in Arizona. But again, the last time a Democrat actually won Arizona for president was back in '96 with Bill Clinton, and Ross Perot was on the ballot, who took out a decent amount of the third-party vote share. So again, to see kind of how this changed and where Arizona is at currently compared to where it was just even 4 years ago, Arizona just looks a lot different from what it was at that point. So it's just it's really been an exciting time.
No, yeah, we can talk about that really quick before we're done, though. So let's talk about where Arizona was 4 years ago. So this is the map of the 2016 presidential race. I'm going to focus. Let's just go all the way out here.
There we go.
There we go.
There's a lot less blue there.
So there's a lot less blue on the margins. Obviously, the city core is still very much a blue stronghold. 76-15 Trump Clinton, 81-12. So we're seeing similar margins. But you see, we get to this purple ring area, you see a lot more red. See a lot more red, especially over here. Let's focus really quick over here in the Ahwatukee-Chandler area. You can see this area, you know, this top half of Chandler right here, north of Elliott Road, you're seeing a lot of blue, red precincts. Pardon me, there's still a lot of blue, but still some red. So let's forward on to what we're looking at right now. I'll go back to the election results.
And an interesting factoid, while Garrett's bringing that up, prior to the 2018 election, every statewide office was held by a Republican, had pretty strong majorities in the House and Senate. And you look at where we're at now, especially in the Senate race, we have 2 Democratic U.S. senators. Previously,
I mean, 2014 was essentially a watermark for Republicans, at a high watermark. There was essentially split straight ticket voting going on in 2014. So just 6 years ago, it was all just very straight ticket voting. If you looked at I'm going to use a geeky term here, but the standard deviation between the candidates, it was very low. Basically, everybody who voted for Republican voted for Republican all the way across the board, and they blew out the competition. And right now, instead, they've got 2. They're staring at 2 Democratic senators and a resurgent sort of the Democratic Party that's going to be ready to spend some real money in the 2022 election, which for Arizona is a super important election because that's our executive office's elections.
Yeah, and Arizona, by the way, shattered all previously known spending records this election on the races, not only from the presidential to the Senate race. We had a first taste of it, of what a competitive U.S. Senate race was like, because the balance of power in the upper chamber in Washington was so close. And we saw that it was, wow, that's a lot of money spent in 2018. The Senate race this time around dwarfed in comparison on the amount of money not only raised by McSally and Kelly, but also spent here in Arizona by their campaigns and outside groups. And it's interesting, Arizona felt very much like Iowa or some of those other places, or Pennsylvania, compared to maybe they'll stop in for a moment. I mean, we were getting weekly visits by high profile folks in the final months of the campaign. So it was just really interesting to see Arizona's relevance and really seen as a big player in the national politics.
Christian, when do you feel that we will have a final decision on Arizona? So that's interesting because we have a call from the AP and Fox News right now. Typically, those are final decisions. I think at this point, we're waiting for another major decision desk. The ones that have already held off, like the New York Times and CNN, they have not called because they're looking at what they're looking at these 60-40 splits, and at one point, if a 70,000 vote drop comes out for Maricopa County and Donald Trump only gets 52% of that vote, then we will likely very quickly show a call from CNN or any of the others, and that's when the dominoes will fall. That's sort of where we are right now. I don't know when that's going to happen. It's going to be up to the decision desks, but the results themselves won't be officially certified for several weeks, and that is standard practice across the country.
Correct.
Chris, your vote shows it's not counted. It was dropped off last week. That can happen. I would call the county recorder's office and just see what's going on with that. It can happen, but it should be counted very quickly. They are still going through ballots that were dropped off last week. There are still a contingent of those they're still going through. Not a whole lot of them, but they still exist right now.
Absolutely.
I just realized we're at 4:40. We're pretty much on the close here. So, Mike, do you have any closing words, closing remarks here?
No, I mean, really, the closing marks is it's just wild, and again, it's just really great to see Again, I know it may create some angst between some folks, but again, when you be relevant, the relevancy, right, and seeing where Arizona currently is and what our impact is on the overall, politics and policy, not only in the country but here locally. Again, I think it's just a very fascinating time to see where Arizona currently is in this election. But we should have ours wrapped up hopefully here pretty soon. And anyways, it's just it's why we engage, but also the more we know, and and relying on trusted resources to go ahead and get that information. And again, anything you guys have, always available to answer any questions to help you lead you to where the data is.
Yeah, thank you, Christian. Thank you for the huge thanks to all the count. I've got a Twitter handle, Garrett_Archer. That is my Twitter handle, and it is a picture of the count. So it's and you can also find Mike on Twitter. He is Mike P. Noble at Mike P. Noble is Mike's Twitter account. He does polling in Arizona. He does a lot of polling. It's and looks like you're going to have some really. You're going to have some accurate rates here. It looks like you're getting close.
I will say this real quick thing, because I know we got to jump. Is that Florida? They absolutely missed it on the polling, right? I can't talk for Florida, but what we can say here in Arizona, we had 4 races on the record. All 4 of them well within the margin of error. Marijuana, for example, had 60%. It's at 59.85. So I can't speak for Florida, but here in Arizona, we're happy to show them how to do some polling and best practices. So again, can't speak for everyone, but not everyone missed. All right, because we do it pretty good here in the desert, I'd say.
Mike, thank you very much for joining us today. If you want to hear about anything else and watch our coverage, abc15.com/election. That is also where you can find that precinct map that we were talking about today and we were playing with, abc15.com/election. Once again, I'm Garrett Archer, and thank you for joining us today.